can't recall out.
And the Lynx got in there. He's going to lose all of his sentries.
Well,
that is an absolute disaster.
That was absolutely horrendous.
Can I retract what I just said? Is that allowed? Or am I stuck with it forever?
That was about as bad as that could possibly go. He lost 3 sentries plus whatever else, and the 3 sentries is all that really matters. And the War Prism's in the main, but Snoot's well aware of it, not going to allow it to do any damage whatsoever. And I don't know what mana does here. Losing 3 sentries early on can be game-ending in its own right. He actually puts a double Stargate. Yeah, that's fair. I can get on board with that.
Man, that was just brutal. I did not expect that out of Mana. Mana's force field control is usually extremely good. He is a very cold and calculated player.
I don't know if he could have really salvaged that with force. Like, he could have made himself not die for a while if he had done it better. Like, he definitely messed it up. But he really just needed to recall out. Like, the biggest blunder there was not having a Mothership Core right over his units as he moved out with 3 sentries. Yeah, no real excuse for that. Yep. He's making Immortals, too. What is this going to be? Is this going to be Immortal Void Ray? Is he just going to be like, if you make Roaches, you die?
I think so. And there are Roaches on the way, including Roach upgrades. So I guess that'll work. And right now, I guess he...
Immortal Void Ray.
Yeah.
That's disgusting.
It's like, well, let's just take the most evil units in the game that we can and put them in one ball, and then we'll be unstoppable, right?
Yeah, that's pretty much how it works.
Yeah,
he's not gonna have any money though. I don't know how much of this can be able to afford. But Snoot is actually playing super low econ. He's like barely making any drones. He's making a ton of Roach Sling, which is the worst possible thing he can be doing against 2-star Void Ray plus a bunch of Immortals and stuff. I think Mana might actually win this. Just what Snoot is doing is so absurdly bad against Void Rays and Immortals.
Yeah,
he's actually just going low econ, 3 gas Roach Sling.
Which is...
I don't know why he would do this blindly. He's doing it without scouting at all. It's actually the worst thing he could be doing right now.
Not really sure. I don't have an explanation for that. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. You'd think that he would at least try and scout. He doesn't have a... He has a couple of Overlords, but they don't have speed yet, so they're probably not going to be able to scout anything unless we may actually see Mana just actually hide behind his buildings, possibly, because he's a little bit worried. So maybe the Overlords do get in if he decides to go for that. But yeah, this is right now anyway. This is Zealot, Immortal, Sentry, and a couple of Void Rays. 3 of them, in fact. That's brutal.
Mana is actually moving out. This could be a little bit dangerous because what Snoot's doing is basically an all-in. He just has an absurd amount of units, and as efficient as Immortals and Void Rays are against those units, they can only do so much. Yeah. So he has to be really careful not to get caught. He has to be watching his force fields, and he has to hit them perfectly. Because if he gets surrounded, his entire army is bad rates.
Oh, there's the force fields, and they're absolutely fine. The Void Rays are now moving in. Mana kept them secret this entire time, so he's now going to move in and attack. But that's a lot of Roaches knocking on the front door, and that's not enough Void Rays, and he's going to have to recall out to his natural here, because he's force fielded himself out here. But Void Rays are pretty good. So a lot of Roaches end up dying here. Lynx come in as well, and the recalls come in too. So Snoot will be able to prevent a 3rd base from going down, absolutely. He's still dealing with this War Prism, which actually hasn't really done anything whatsoever. It's trying to warp in, and it is not going to die. Very nice control there by Mana. And now the Zealots are actually going to do something for once.
And he might actually get a Queen Kill out of this. He's definitely going to get at least a drone or 2. Not really accomplishing much.
Yeah, Snoot's control's too good. He was able to micro that Queen very nicely, and that's the full surround there, no problem at all.
I'm still liking Mana's position here. For as absurdly bad as that first attack was, his composition and what Snoot is doing, he has 4 Void Rays, Colossus, and 2 Immortals against a pure Roachling army with no fallback. Snoot was very, very low economy. He's just now taking his 5th and 6th gases. He only has 3 hatcheries. Very low production. Very, very low tech. No real upgrades to speak. No upgrades to speak of. I just don't understand at all why Snoot decided to play like this. And Mana's getting a little bit over-aggressive here. His Mothership Core is not with him. If he gets caught, he's going to die. And Game of Thrones continues.
Well, yeah, let's see how this one goes. There are a lot of units stuck outside of those force fields. The force fields are generally good, but the sentries are rapidly dying, and this army is going to get absolutely crushed. Mana's army gets destroyed utterly, and Snoot doesn't really lose a huge amount for it either, so suddenly this swings right back in the favor, and a single Void Ray is not enough to kill 27 Roaches, at least not yet. There's another Colossus available, and actually 2 more Void Rays, however, so it may be that Snoot decides to donate some extra units.
That was just... that was so bad. If Mana just sits in Turtles, I really think he wins the game. And he had decent scouting information. He knew that Snoot had no follow-up tech, had no real economy to speak of. didn't really have anything to go on. And then he just attacks into a massive amount of roaches and lings anyway.
Well, Snoot is losing a lot of units in this attack, but they're not exactly high value, and he is able to force cancel on the third base there. Snoot obviously kind of obsessed with the idea that he does not want to allow the Protoss player to take a third, which is fine. And it is limiting the Void Ray production significantly. We are talking about Colossus Void Ray, which on 4 gas, you're not going to be able to make a huge amount of them.
No, that is pretty limited by your income. But yeah, if Mana had just secured that third base, I think he wins for sure.
Yeah.
I don't want to keep harping on that, but it's just so mind-boggling that he would choose to attack there when he has seen that all of his opponent is doing is producing low-tech units.
It's really not, it's not a Mana style either. Mana is legendarily passive, and it's very surprising that he would do a 2-base attack like that. It's not like him at all, so unless he has changed his style very recently, and I don't know about it, and I must have cast Mana 50-plus games, at least, and every single time he plays passive, passive, passive. He wants 3 bases, he gets the composition he wants, he molds that composition to what his opponent is doing, and then he attacks when he feels comfortable. He plays defensively, and he's not doing that here, and that's really odd. And it's given Snoot a nice edge, who's just got up to Hive, is working on what looks to be Roach Hydra Viper here.
Roach Hydra Viper, going to be very good against this composition as long as he can get the Hydras up and running. There's still a good number of Void Rays there, but it's just such a small army. You see a 60 supply lead for Snoot, and it's not like he has a lot of drones filling that up. He's on relatively low drone income. And lots of Queen's static defense. He's not going to die here. And Snoot still does have Colossus Void Ray. That's a very powerful composition. He has a surprising amount of units for the fact that he's been on 2 base the entire time, and he's thrown away a big high-tech army.
Yeah.
He has more than I expect. And if he gets that gold base running, it's 3 base versus 3 base with a fresh gold base. Snoot does not have a gold. Snoot's still only on still only on 3 hatcheries, still bad upgrades. The game is actually not lost for Mana, as bad as some of this has been for him. And as absurd as that idea is, he actually could still very easily win this. If this Roach Hydra Viper attack doesn't do massive amounts of work, it's actually going to get kind of scary for Snoot here in a second. But he's going to be pretty hard-pressed to defend this if there's good abducts.
Yeah, that's true. And he should be able to do that. There are, of course, no Templar to feed back there. You can focus them down with the Void Rays, but by that point, the abduct has already happened. The range on that is far higher. So it's a bit dangerous for Mana to even be anywhere on the map at all at this point. And it's like he just has to sit and defend this third and make sure he takes a good fight, and then he can start to attack. Because the Hydra count is actually very low. It's only at 13 because he was maxed out. He sacked a few lings here and there. He turned some drones into spines just so he could get a couple extra units. But it's entirely possible that Mana could hold this.
He's actually reached 180 supply, and it's a pretty high-tech 180 supply army. There's only 2 Colossus. He's hallucinating some, which is really, really smart. If he abducts the hallucinations and doesn't get even one of the real ones survives.
He abducts a hallucination. That's really, really nice. The Overseers didn't quite come in time, and the Hydras also, by the looks of it, focusing on a hallucination. The fight comes in. The force fields are fantastic. Look at the number of roaches stuck behind those force fields on the left flank right there. The overcharged Void Rays smash their way in. Snoop plummets in supply. Mana with the excellent hold.
Excellent hold, and Void Rays now doing what Void Rays do. As you said, only 13 Hydras in that. Even 13 Hydras for that number of Void Rays, just heads up. I don't know if they beat that.
Those Hydras don't even have speed. They're getting picked off at the back.
No, and now, I think for the first time in this game, Mana has actually taken a small supply lead. Snoot's now trying to take his gold base, but that's going to be so exposed once this army gets going. And we now have Templar Tech in the mix as well for Mana. Mana has taken pretty firm control of this game. Roach Hydra Viper is a very timing-oriented build. It does not scale well at all. Your first timing attack needs to do really, really big damage. Otherwise, you're going to be in a lot of trouble, because Vipers just take so much supply up out of your army, and they really don't do a whole lot unless you have a very specific setup and composition to work with them. You really need static defense, you need swarm hosts, so you can abduct units into that and kill them for free. And he's moving towards that now, but it takes a long time to set up well.
That it does, and he might not have that time. Mana seems to have found himself an opportunity, and he would be correct in that assumption. There's some Spore Crawlers going down, but that's nothing that the Colossus can't take out. He just needs to be a little bit careful about how he engages, make sure those don't get caught out of position. There's still a decent number of roaches on the field, a few swarm hosts on the way, but not that kind of big critical mass that you need, and Enduring Locust is not quite done yet either, and Mana wants to fight now, looking for that to happen. Feedbacks come down the Vipers, absolutely fantastic feedbacks on the Vipers. Every last one of them gets nailed to the ground there. That's going to be a lot of free roaches that he's able to grab, and the full firepower comes in from that Protoss army, and the Zerg gets absolutely decimated. Snoot's sitting on a lot of queens, 14 of them in fact, which will give him a bit of resistance to this Void Ray ball here, but that again was a good fight for Mana.
Perfect feedbacks on those Vipers. Not a single abduct went off, which is really important when you only have 2 Colossus. That's a big chunk of your firepower.
Yeah.
And if you lose all your Colossus, you lose most of your AoE. And against Swarm Hosts, you have to have AoE. You have to be able to clear the Locusts, otherwise you're not going to make any progress at all. And Mana just keeps getting stronger. He has this big high-tech army. He's finally starting to scale well with upgrades. He didn't get his Twilight Council for a really long time, so he's stuck at 1-1. Snoot, I believe, is still on 1-1. He has just +2 weapons about to finish. And there's actually a Warpin in the main, not really going to do too much damage, and a big counterattack. Everything's happening at once. Snoot going in, canceling the 4th base, but at the same time, Mana's going to go in for a frontal assault. Gets denied pretty easily. Yeah,
there's a lot of spores there, and this is... I hate it when this happens. We are looking at the Swarm Host Spore Crawler Queen composition, also known as the Fire Cake composition, which can result in very, very long games indeed. So the hope is that that doesn't end up happening, but it's a strong build to go for in this kind of situation. You want to be able to resist these kind of attacks, and Snoot is trying to go for the natural, doesn't really do too much damage, loses a lot of roaches again in the process, evening up the supply, but the Swarm Host count is already at 18. We could be in here for the long haul.
Yep, and it's hard to fault him for it. I would say that this is, bar none, the best way to play late game CVP. There's just no other way to really stand up against a Protoss Deathball. You need static defense, you need Swarm Hosts, and you need Vipers to make him, like, just to pull units into your unstoppable wall of stuff. And with that many queens, he's going to be able to keep this alive forever. It's really, really hard for Mana to actually attack at this point. He needed to make something happen right after that failed Roach Hydra Viper attack, but he wasn't aware that the Swarm Host switch was coming, so it's kind of understandable that he messed that up.
I wonder if he'll be able to make things work with these Warpins, because he's already taken out 1 base. If he can take down the economy of his opponent and just start to warp in behind that big line of Swarm Hosts, maybe he will be able to make this work, and he won't have to be forced into a direct confrontation, but we'll see. The Locusts coming out, you don't want to be anywhere near that. They're already 2-1, a lovely abduct on the Mothership core there. Fantastic, that's no recall, which means Mana is not feeling so comfortable out here anymore.
No, he's not, and he has no time stops if somehow a fight does happen, or if he really feels the need to clear some Locusts. Mana is expanding around his side of the map, the smart thing to do. That's the way you really beat this style. You just out-expand it, and you counterattack, and you harass everywhere. He needs to have multiple Warp Prisms going, 1 bottom right, 1 up in the main, because there's no mobility at all in Snoot's army. He was not setting up for this all game. He does not have the massive amount of static defense that, like, a Stefano would have in his main, because he plans for this style. He prepares for it the entire game. He sets up all of his spaces to be resistant to counterattacks. Snoot is falling into it out of necessity, so he doesn't have that backup defense against all of the counterattacks. But unfortunately, Mana is not really taking advantage of that. He's just trying to fight a head-on fight, which is where Snoot is really, really good with his composition.
Yeah, storms are coming down here, and Abduct goes on with the Void Ray, and every one of those Void Rays that goes down is absolutely crucial. That's a lot of gas. It's basically a capital unit that gets killed there. The Colossus will be able to do a decent job here, and feedbacks go down, but they go down on Queens. They do not go down on Vipers, and this is a very, very difficult army to attack when Vipers are still alive. If the Vipers go down, then the Colossus can do work, but right now, Creep is spreading all the way up to the 3rd here. Snoot is putting down 7 tumors at a time. Warpins are happening for Mana. He's doing run-bys. He has killed 1 base, and he has completely sacked another. So things are going okay for him here, but he lost a lot of probes. He's on 49 and he's sitting on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bases. That's not quite enough.
No. And Snoot, he has free units. He doesn't really need money nearly as much as Mana does. Mana is the one who kind of has to make something happen at this point. Snoot can just sit here with Swarm Hosts in the middle of the map, choke him out, and continue to pound on bases, and eventually something will break. This is a very good map for the Swarm Host Turtle kind of style. It's so easy to cut down the middle.
Here we go. Here comes the blink. Great transfuse there by Snoot. Absolutely fantastic. He goes for yet another blink into the middle of that. Of course, he doesn't want to go too far because there's plenty of Spore Crawlers and Queens. Abducts come on 2 more of the Void Rays. They're charged as best as they can, but they will die. So this Void Ray ball is now down to 5, which is a little bit less threatening. The infuriating Locusts are still moving their way through here and smashing this army, doing a lot of damage. The DPS is absolutely massive, so you don't want to be anywhere near that.
Snoot has now actually taken control of the area by the gold base for Mana. Be sending Swarm Hosts up into there and into the natural, so getting more and more annoying, more and more aggressive with these. And at this point, it's starting to just look like a slow, inevitable death for mana. He just doesn't really seem to have an answer for this. He doesn't have the amount of money necessary. He is taking out the bottom right base, and he probably will end up killing that hatchery, but he just doesn't have the money necessary to really force a base race with the warp-ins, which is kind of what you have to do if you don't have much economy.
Yep. And he is gotta get that base. There we go. Okay, so that did pop, which is great. But as you said, these are free units. What does he care? He's relying on locusts. There's 35 of them. You can kill as many queens as you want. There's still 35 swarm hosts making locusts.
Yep, and Mana actually just given up on defending. He is running around. He is going to go for the base race with his existing army. That's not a bad choice to make at this point. I don't think he's not going to win the wearer of attrition. It's just it's getting worse and worse for him over time.
Yep.
And
Storms go in,
really
time stop. Right on top of it. And he can kill most of the locusts without taking too much damage, but he hasn't got his hands on the swarm hosts yet. That Zealot Warpin is doing damage at the natural here. Mana looking to try and get... That's a nice choke point for Mana to be in with those Colossus, especially if he can funnel the locusts. He puts down the force field to allow that to actually happen.
And he's just eating through those locusts, and he hasn't really lost too much. He still has a ton of mana left for Storm as well.
Yeah.
He might be able to make something work. He has a bunch of Zealots in the natural taking out the hatchery there. They can go into the main very easily. There's no more defense there. Mana might be able to make something work. And in all of this, Snoot has actually forgotten about his own aggression. He has not taken out the bottom left base, which is completely undefended. And he hasn't even taken out the 3rd/4th base of Mana either. Although he does have some locusts rallied over there. That should happen eventually. But with Mana's army coming back to defend, he might be able to hold on to that. And
this
so
hive is getting pretty low, man. It shouldn't die. Actually, it's coming pretty close. +3 Zealots are quite good. And oh wow, he picks off the hive. That is fantastic. Mana is really bringing this back. I mean, the army supplies don't really tell that kind of story, but oh, he gets on top of the swarm hosts yet again. He's able to kill off a couple of them, which is nice. That means there's only 36 more he has to deal with, but a storm right on top of the swarm hosts and on top of the locusts as well. Colossus, a good firing angle. I'm liking this right here for Mana. He takes out yet more. He's forced back, however, needs to keep those spellcasters alive.
He absolutely does. He's just so hard for him to replace. Actually, he's gaining more and more bank, more and more money. He has mining bases, and Snoot really doesn't. He only has that gold base going, and it's not even completely saturated. And he's actually going to take out another hatchery with these Zealot Weapons. There's just no mobile response at all from Snoot. He has no stag defense to fall back on. Swarm Host obviously can't respond to it well enough. And another hatchery is going to die. There's one remaining hatchery on the map.
It's incredible. It's really, really nicely played by Mana, I've got to say. And this hatchery that's alive, by the way, is about mined out as well. So Mana has been warping in all over the place. It looks like that Firecake game really gave him some experience in dealing with this style.
Absolutely did. And that's what it is. It's just you have to have experience with the style. It looks so frustrating to play against, and it is genuinely very strong. But if you know how to deal with it, and you're in pretty good shape to begin with, you can. It feels uncomfortable. It feels like it shouldn't be this way. But if you just expand everywhere, you run around and counterattack, you never actually fight the locusts. As long as you can make that happen, it's very beatable. And Mana, he was looking a little bit shaky at first, but then he started making the right decisions for sure.
Storm Drop went on the gold base as well, taking that out. However, Blinding Cloud is coming down, and Snoot has forced that back. Some losses have been taken here by Mana. Needs to be careful. That's still a huge amount of locusts. You cannot fight that army head-on. It's 41 swarm hosts worth of locusts. It's just a massive number. There's 53 on the map right now. 101 on the map right now.
He absolutely cannot fight this head-on. He can't get overconfident because he's getting the game in hand. Snoot has essentially no money left. There's not really a whole lot he can do, but that's just an absurd army left over. You cannot fight that head-on, and you cannot lose these units because Mana still doesn't have very much money of his own built up.
He's only mining from 30 probes, which is really not helpful.
I don't know. As good as it's looking for Mana, and as excited as I was for him, I'm not sure if he's kind of getting himself backed into a corner here. He doesn't have a mothership core with him. He can't recall out. No, he might get trapped and might actually lose this army to Locust, which would be just absolutely terrible.
The final mining base is actually going down here. Mana is focusing it down with those +3 Zealots and doing a great job of taking them out. You might want to consider something like shield upgrades here as well, considering. But regardless, there's another base going down for Mana as well. These Snoot Locusts are doing very well. There's no mining bases remaining for the Protoss player here.
And Snoot has actually retreated a lot of his swarm hosts while leaving some out there. If Mana actually recognizes that and pounces on it, he could get a bunch of, well, some 4 or 5 free kills cleaning those out. Doesn't seem like he's aware of it, though. I'm not actually sure if it was a good idea for Mana to go back and play on the defensive. I think he should have just run around the map and play base race, because swarm hosts are really bad at base racing from behind like that. I think going back to defend was a bit of a misstep there. This is still a salvageable game, though. He has a lot of Void Rays, he has a lot of high-tech army. He's going to have a ton of Storms, because all those Templar have full mana now. And Snoot's actually pulling back into kind of a defensive position, which isn't so good. Mana's going to be able to retake map control, start expanding, clear out some of this creep. Actually caught a bunch of the queens out there.
Yeah, he didn't want to fight them. I think there were a few too many. I think he would have lost a few Void Rays there.
Yeah, those Locusts are about to dissipate. If he actually had his ground army in position, he could have jumped on that. But Snoot gets back to safety in time. And Mana establishing one more final base.
Yep.
I don't know if he's going to be able to hold it. That Swarm Host army is just so powerful. I don't think he can defend. I think he has to base race and try and get pickoffs and catch units out of position and fragmented and whatnot.
Yeah, it's a really slow game of cat and mouse right now, where his army is at the bottom, but unfortunately that's where the Locusts are going, and he needs it to be the other way around. He needs to be at the top. He needs to have, say, use his Mothership Core to move his army very quickly and outmaneuver his opponent. That's another base that gets popped there by the Void Ray Force, which is very nice, but as I said, this Nexus is now starting to take some fire, some pretty heavy fire. There are actually only 5 probes on the map, so that Nexus really only serves as a warping point at this stage. He's not going to be mining much from it.
No, not really. And the thing is, he actually has no money, so he's not going to be able to put up another Nexus, most likely. It's unlikely he's actually going to get 400 minerals out of that Nexus.
Storm coming in. Caught a couple of those Templar at the back. He's able to deal with that, but he spent quite a lot of energy dealing with those Locusts. There's still 41 Swarm Hosts, 80 Locusts on the field. The next wave comes in. I'm really surprised that Mana's trying to fight that. I really am. Like, it seems like he's only going to lose units every time he does it.
I think he's kind of giving up at this point. I think he feels like he just has to charge and go for it, and if he doesn't, he's going to lose no matter what. I'm not sure that's entirely true.
That's to be fair.
He picks off a couple of queens for free.
Playing against this style does make one want to hang themselves, but I think that Mana does want to try and get a handle on things. But he started to lose too many units, I feel. He's lost a couple of Void Rays, he's lost a couple of Templar here and there, his army supply's got a lot lower. On the plus side, he only has an army. He has 3 probes left, so doesn't really make a huge amount of difference. The Void Ray comes around again, however, that means that he's going to lose 2 more Void Rays to the Abduct and not actually get the hatchery. So he's being picked apart. Oh, 3 Void Rays to the Abduct. I think Mana may have lost this at this point.
I agree. You can't do that. The Void Rays are the most important part of this. He is finally swinging his army up around the map, maybe looking for that base race, realizing that he can't just fight Locusts forever because the free units win in that scenario. But he's actually just continuing to play defensively. I don't know what he expects to happen with that.
Well, slow death charge right.
Yeah, that's what will happen. I don't know what he expects. Unless he's just looking for that. But he needed to charge across the map and get aggressive there.
Yeah, he's now starting to outmaneuver it, but the Colossus are caught at the back, and Mana almost lost one. He actually recalls there.
He recalled out.
Yeah.
Right back to his main. To do here.
No, this is not working here for Mana now, and Snoot has re-established bases, lots of bases. He actually still has drones. He's up to 29 versus 3 probes. He's got 144 Locusts on the field at that point, which is quite silly. Infestation pits being re-added. He's starting to build his tech back up. He's got his lair back up, building 13 drones here, because who needs units when you've got a bunch of free ones? And Mana is just sort of wandering around the map, slowly, aimlessly dying. He's like a zombie horde at this point.
Yeah, this is a very frustrating position to be in for Mana. It's kind of understandable that he looks a bit lost, but he doesn't want to leave the game. It's just... He absolutely could have, should have, would have won this game at a couple of different points.
Yeah.
The decision-making was just... It wasn't quite there. And now he's actually getting
in the corner. Yep. Oh, this is only going to go one way. The Void Rays actually fight quite effectively there. You yoinked a few too many Void Rays. The Storms are coming in. He puts a Storm down on those. I mean, he'd have to kill all of them to even stand a chance at this point, and he's losing Templar at the back here. Yeah, I mean, this is pretty much over.
That it is. Just not enough stuff left to fight against the massive swarms of Locusts he's getting every minute or two.
Not at all. And in fact, Snoot's just going to march right at it. Loses a few Swarmos in the process. If Snoot threw the game from this position, that would have been...
I don't think it's physically possible. He has 180
I don't think so.
40.
No, there's no way. And Mana understands. Yeah, he's killing as many Locusts more so out of spite than anything else, I feel, at this point. And he's on 28 supply. Now is the time to leave the game, Mana. You know, you've proven your point. It's just time to go. You're not going to win this, I'm afraid.
No. Still sticking around. Still looking for something. He has a couple of Void Rays doing harassment over the natural. That is his last hope, if you want to call it that.
23 army supply at 147. So
he's up to 27 now.
Yeah. So anything goes here in this game. Anything could possibly happen in the next few minutes.
It's understandable. It was a very frustrating game. He certainly could have won it, but he made mistakes. He made bad attacks. He made bad decisions. And as annoying as Swarm Host Turtle is, it shouldn't even have gotten to that point. If he had done it well, he would have killed him.
And there's the GG.
And he GG's.
Yep. A little bit too late. That was unfortunate. You're absolutely right. When he went around and started tearing the bases apart, that was absolutely fantastic. And then at that point, he should have gone, as you said, for the committed base race. Find out where the swarm hosts are, go where they aren't, and then go for it. But that didn't happen. And then he died slowly over the course of 30 minutes.
Yeah, even before that, like he should have gone for the base race once the swarm host turtle was established. But he could have killed him at least twice before that. His initial attack was way too early. Like, he saw Roachling and he charged into the middle of it anyway. And then after that, he was still in the game. And he won a very solid defense against the Roach Hydra Viper. There he had another opportunity to go kill him as he was trying to switch into Swarm Hosts. Because the Swarm Hosts were basically panic at that point. He had nothing else that was like a fallback. Well, let's pray and make these and hope it works out. And he just gave him the time to get it set up. Then he didn't respond to it properly in time. He didn't start establishing expansions or doing any kind of base racing or harassment until it was far too late. It's really unfortunate because he had everything he needed to win, and in the end he clearly showed that he knew how to play against it. He just didn't commit to it early enough or hard enough.
Well, that's that. Yes. Bit of a fizzle on the last game there. It was going pretty well for a while, but the last 20 minutes did get a little depressing, I have to say. But, well, Poland, one of the strongest competitors, unfortunately is not able to make it happen. And Norway, again, a bit of a surprise, is able to make it through to day 3.
Yeah, I'd still say that Ike was the story of today.
Yeah,
that was
he played really well.
A breakout performance. No, I don't think anyone had ever heard of him, much less seen him play or considered him a real contender against this caliber of player. And then he just comes out and he goes, what, 4-2, 5-2, and beats players like Happy. Makes Dystar look pretty bad, honestly. His ZVP, definitely a little bit questionable. Oh, he beat Mana as well. Very impressive performance from him. And then, of course, nice by Snoot to pull out, I don't know. His early game there looked really, really questionable. And then his mid game looked really, really questionable. But he stuck with it. He showed great tenacity, and he pulled it out when it really mattered for his team, or for his country.
Absolutely. Well, there you go. Norway will advance to day 3 alongside Russia, which was perhaps the more expected result. And Spain and Poland are eliminated from the Nation Wars. Now, tomorrow, you can tune in at exactly the same time, which I believe is 11 a.m. EST. That is 8 a.m. on the Pacific West Coast. That would be 4 p.m. in the British Isles GMT, 5 p.m. Central European Time, and 6 p.m. Eastern European Time. So if you do that, you will find yet more of this. We've got another group stage, so 5 best of 5s tomorrow. That will actually not be with Greg. It will be myself and Day 9 casting that one. So Greg is probably happy for the break after that rather lengthy session. And the teams will be, we're going to have the Ukraine, we're going to have France, we're going to have Sweden, and we're going to have Germany. And Sweden, funnily enough, Sweden's lineup is actually the one that looks the weakest, which is weird because you wouldn't expect that, but it is lacking some key players. Let's just put it that way, because there was some unfortunate drama surrounding the Swedish recruitment, which has resulted in Bishu, Moro, and Zanster being the lineup.
That's still a competent lineup. Bishu and Moro are capable of taking games off anyone. But yeah, normally you'd expect Sweden to be a powerhouse, and as is, I don't know if they quite live up to that title.
Not anymore. I don't think so. But it's unfortunate that that went down the way that it did. But regardless, Bishu can take games off anyone. I would never underestimate Bishu. Moro, of course, has been around forever. Zanster I have not had the opportunity to watch, but who knows?
He's apparently a very young Zerg player who's considered promising by some, at least. I've never seen him play either.
All right. Well, I think we have been on air quite long enough, thankfully. that was enough. I have encoded 1.02 million frames of video. I have dropped 0 frames. And we have sent 12.75 gigabytes of StarCraft in your general direction. So that's how things have gone today. We have been on the air now for
10
hours? Give or take 10 hours. Which I think is quite long enough. So I'm going to hope that people are still available for delivery, because I can't be asked to cook after that. So that was lengthy. We'll be doing it all again tomorrow, folks. and I am going to sign off right now. You can watch the VODs. They should be up by tomorrow, I think. It'll take us a little while to cut and edit those VODs, but they should be going in then. Of course, if you're subscribed, then the VODs are already available, so you'll be able to check them out on the Twitch TV VOD section there. Of course, day 3 will be the finals. That, I believe, will be